Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. I'm your host, Ray Flowers. Thanks for joining me today. Going to have a lot of fun here on the show. Obviously, Justin Fessman was with you yesterday and Wednesday. Sorry about missing things on Tuesday. You will find out why in a couple of minutes. Why there was no show, you already know, actually. I was doing multiple drafts, including hosting a draft for SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. We're going to have some fun on the show today. We're going to talk about a lot of things, baseball and football, kind of following the general plan with a little bit of a tweak. So let's just jump into it. Let's throw up the screen on the screen here. The show plan for today, we're going to talk about some SiriusXM show updates. I got a lot of shows coming, a lot of baseball drafts for those of you that are into that. And I know a lot of you are. So we'll talk about that. We're going to review my TOUT WARS and LABR teams. We'll do that as well. In about 25-30 minutes, halfway through the show, we'll visit with Tyler Buecher of FantasyGuru.com. We'll talk some football with Tyler. We'll talk a little bit about the Combine, right? What is the Combine? What should you care about with the Combine? What should you have for a takeaway from the Combine? We'll do all this Combine talk. We'll also have a couple of storylines: Trent Williams, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Devante Adams, and Anthony Richardson. Don't forget, you can go to FantasyGuru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner, get signed up for any of the products: football, baseball, basketball, hockey, NASCAR, PGA, MMA, all the stuff, horse racing, everything you can think of. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. This show is Monday through Friday, Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FG, as we talked about. 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we usually go about an hour. Lots going on at this time of the year, though. Lots of changes on shows and that kind of thing. I was on the SiriusXM show yesterday, writing solo. Jeff Mans is on vacation this week. He'll return on Monday. Today, there'll be no FG show. The Elite Sports Show will not be on SiriusXM today. They have the FSWA award ceremony today in that 3-hour time block. Ted and I will return tomorrow at SiriusXM. So from 3 to 6 tomorrow, the Elite Sports Show returns with Ted Schuster and Ray Flowers, and the show will be back on Monday, of course, with Jeff Mans. I'll throw up on the screen kind of what my schedule is here the next week or so, and it's busy. So for those of you that are looking for drafts, you want to get draft coverage, you have different types of leagues, all that kind of stuff, we got you covered over at SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Starting tomorrow, you can obviously hear me in the morning. I'll be on the show here. I'll then be on the Elite Sports Show, as I just mentioned, 3 to 6 Eastern with Ted Schuster. On Saturday, I'll be covering the LABR AL only auction draft from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Sunday, I'll be covering the NL only auction draft from 3 to 5 p.m. on SiriusXM. So Saturday and Sunday, league onlys, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for those. Monday, we'll be here with you in the morning. And then right after this show, I got to get over and hop over quick to SiriusXM. I'm going to be doing the GM's Corner with Jim Bowden. It's a one-off. Steve Phillips is traveling, doing his tour this spring, going from camp to camp and all that. So I'll be on with Jim Bowden on Monday on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. That show is 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll talk outfielders on that show. On Tuesday, I'll again be here with you on Fantasy Sports Daily. And then there'll be the TOUT WARS draft that I'll be covering from 8 to 11 p.m. with, I believe, Steve Phillips and Kyle Elfrink. I'm not sure on that. We'll see. But I think that's who I'm doing it with. So we'll be doing that TOUT WARS draft Tuesday, 8 to 11 Eastern Time. The following Monday, March 10th, I'll be back on SiriusXM hosting the FSGA Champions League, much like the FSGA draft that we're just, the LABR draft that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, which I was hosting and drafting in. Unfortunately, I'll be hosting and drafting in the FSGA draft too on March 10th. That draft is from 8 to 11 Eastern Standard Time. You can see all of this on the screen if you're watching us at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork, at facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ, or on Twitter X @FantasyGuruSite. All three of those spots, you can watch us live. You can obviously watch the show anytime on demand at those three locations. You can also, if you're watching live, ask questions, leave comments, all that kind of stuff too. So that's an interesting way to do it. So that's what we got going on, or that's what I should say I've got going on here, coming up with extra shows on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Okay, let's dive into today. And let's start out by talking TOUT WARS. You can see the team there on the screen. For those of you, again, that are watching live or on demand, you can always catch the show by typing Fantasy Sports Daily into your podcast network or clicking the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page over at FG. Both of these drafts that we're going to talk about, TOUT WARS and FSGA, both of them have a write-up over at fantasyguru.com with more details. I wanted to touch on them a little bit. I kind of hinted I would do this earlier, so let's do it here. But again, both the Tout Wars draft and the Labor draft that we're going to discuss here for the next 15 or 20 minutes, both of those drafts are covered over at fantasyguru.com. The articles are free to read, so everyone can go over there. Just head over to the website, get to the baseball section, and you'll see the articles up there. The first league we're going to talk about is my Tout Wars team. This is the league that I actually won last year. It's the alternative league setup, as you can see for those of you looking on the screen. This league has on-base percentage that replaces batting average, as it should. We had a caller yesterday ask about that on the Elite Sports Show on SiriusXM, and here we go. It's on-base percentage league instead of batting average, which I think is the way we should be playing leagues at this point. So on-base percentage replaces the batting average. The other four categories are the same: home runs, RBIs, runs, and steals. On the pitching side of things, innings pitched replaces victories, because victories, as we talk about all the time, are totally wild. Let's give some value to guys that take the ball and throw innings, which is, again, a dying breed these days. So innings pitched replace wins. And as I talk about all the time, solds replaces saves. So saves plus holds. It's a better way to do it. There's more value to just targeting the right reliever, the skill set, that kind of thing, versus worrying about what the manager is going to do with the lineup. As you can see in the draft board, a lot of people waited on pitching. We still had some, closers go early, that kind of thing. But a lot of people just waited on pitching, which I think makes, waited on relievers, I should say, which makes all the sense in the world, because we're, again, not scrambling to trying to find some jamoke to get 30 saves. We're just worried about guys that are pitching well. This is a 15-team mixed league. Both leagues, the Tout Wars and the Labor draft that we're going to discuss, both of them are 15-team leagues. The the Labor league is traditional 5x5 scoring. But this is the alternative scoring system for Tout Wars. Again, I won this league last year. I'm looking to defend my title this year. There was a huge influx of talent. We had a big turnover of players in this league. I finished first. Jeff Pontus finished second. Interestingly, I drafted first the other night, and Jeff Pontus drafted second. As you'll read about in the article, there was a couple of times where Jeff snaked me. So I guess we think an awful lot alike. But, Ryan Boyer, Derek Van Riper, Greg Jewett, John Lagaza, Carlos Marcano, Zach Steinhorn, CJ Kaltenbach, Matt Trussell, Joe Royko, Matt Sitterholm, Scott Pianowski, Kyle Sape, and Howard Bender. So a really star-studded cast of people this season. You can see there on both, and again, this is what we talk about all the time. People with all their weird setups in the fantasy space. The fact is that the traditional setup, and it has been the traditional setup for literally 35, 40 years, if I'm not mistaken. 14 hitters, 9 pitchers. The pitchers can be starters or relievers. There's no designation. It can be all relievers if you want. It can be all starters if you want, mix and match. 9 pitchers start each day. The hitting side of things, there's 14 hitters. 2 catchers, first base, second base, third base, shortstop, 5 outfielders, corner infield, middle infielder, UT. So both these leagues have that same setup in terms of the league size and in terms of the starting lineup. The categories are different, but otherwise they're the same. So in that draft, I take at the top of the draft Shohei Ohtani, get him out of the way as my first round pick, as you can see there on the screen if you're following along with me. Then we went James Wood, and that was an aggressive play for me. Now, again, I'm at the end of a turn, right? So I get the first pick. Then I got to wait to the 30th, 31st pick, and then I got to wait 30 picks. I have to be proactive, right? If I want to get a player, I can't play the ADP game because I got 30 picks roughly between my 2 selections, right? So I have to jump ADP if I want to get my guy. That's just the only way to do it, because I can't, there's no way to predict how 28 picks are going to go 29 picks are going to go before I get a choice again. So I went really aggressive and grabbed James Wood. We'll see if that plays off. I also went really aggressive with Jose Altuve. Now, as you'll see in a second, I took Jose Altuve a full round earlier in this league than I did in Labor, because, again, I was on the end. In Labor, I had the 8th pick. In this Tout Wars draft, I had the 1st pick. So your strategy has to be different based upon where you end up in terms of putting your lineup together based upon your draft position. So my first 3 picks were Ohtani, James Wood, Jose Altuve. For those of you that haven't been paying a ton of attention, haven't done a ton of drafts yet, the second base position is not strong this year. And I think that looking at I didn't want to be scrambling at second base. That was kind of my line of thought. Number 1, I didn't want to be scrambling at second base. Number 2, Jose Altuve almost hit 300 last year and went 2020. really not showing many signs of slowing down. So whether he's, second baseman 1, 2, 3, everyone believes in Jose Altuve, including myself. A little bit of power, a little bit of speed, solid batting average. In this situation, solid on base percentage. So I'm just locking that guy in here in the third round. Then, because I was on the end, I did something that, I don't always do, which is go a little early with pitching. I went usually I tend to dive in 5th, 6th round for pitching. Usually, oftentimes I go 5th and 6th round pitchers. Again, it all depends how the team is coming together and how the draft is going. But in this draft, I went 4th and 5th round pitchers because, again, I'm on the turn and I didn't want to wait for all those picks to get my guy. So I grabbed Yoshi Yamamoto, who was terrific last year. I think he made, 16 starts? He was terrific. He needs to show he can go deeper into the season. He's anticipated and expected to do that this year. Then I went with Luis Castillo, who's slightly boring, who you can talk about not being an elite level pitcher, and I can support that. I will say that in a 15-team league, Luis Castillo is absolutely an SP2. Absolutely. And his stability, the 180 innings he throws every year, I thought was a nice combination with Yoshi Yamamoto. So I went with Luis Castillo. My next pitcher was Joe Ryan. I consider Joe Ryan a top 30 pitcher too. I think most people do. So while I don't have an ace per se, I do have Yamamoto, Castillo, and Joe Ryan. To me, that's 3 top 30 pitchers in a 15-team league. That's pretty good, right? I then filled out my staff, as you can see there on the screen: Robbie Ray, Jeffrey Springs, Jesus Luzardo, Max Scherzer, Brian Abreu, Aroldis Chapman. In the reserve rounds, Chris Martin, Bobby Miller, and Kenley Jansen. Kenley Jansen, who I think most people would say 25 saves this year, 29th round pick, final round. Again, that's what happens when you're in a Solds league. So Yamamoto, Castillo, Ryan, Robbie Ray, who apparently learned a changeup grip from Tariq Skubal in the offseason. Robbie Ray, who made only 7 starts last year, but dominated in the strikeout column as he should this year. Robbie Ray, who pitches now in San Francisco, which is an excellent ballpark for him, helping keep the ball in the yard most likely. Really seems primed to have a significant season. And as a 4th starter, again, in the 15-team league, I love that. Jeffrey Springs is a 5th starter. Okay. It's fine. I'm not super excited about that, but it's fine. There'll be a player profile on Jeffrey Springs here coming up at the website in a couple of weeks. Jesus Luzardo and Max Scherzer are risks. But in the 17th and 22nd round, I took those risks. If both those guys make 20 solid starts, I'm in good shape. If both those guys make a combined 20 starts, I'm in a little bit of trouble. But this is how it goes with the pitching. So we all know that. It's just how it goes. On the offensive side of things, I think that you look at this team and there's one obvious weakness, and the obvious weakness is the catcher spot, the second catcher spot. I want to address that here. Most of you are in 1 catcher leagues. Even if you're in a 2 catcher league, you're doing 10 or 12 team leagues. You're not doing 15-team leagues. Multiple teams, including me. Multiple teams in a 15-team mixed league are going to have a rough second catcher. It's just, there's no way around it. Was not a plan. I didn't go in expecting that. In this draft, I got Tyler Stevenson. In LABR, I got Gabriel Moreno. So I've got 1 catcher I feel really good about in both scenarios. In both of them, Andy Rodriguez here, Freddie Fermin there. The second catcher is kind of, Is that an ideal way to draft? No. I obviously wouldn't have done it twice if I thought it was wrong to do it. And again, this comes down to how you're able to, massage your lineup and what's going on around you and all of that. I would say it's not ideal. But again, if you have strength in other spots, it's okay. In a 15-team mixed league, you have to understand there's going to be weaknesses on your team. I mean, there's no way around that. There's just going to be, you can't build a stellar crew across the board. It's just not possible. There's too many teams and too many players being drafted. It's just how it is. So that's a little bit of a weakness. Remember, this is an on-base percentage. Yandy Diaz at first base is huge. He's 400 on-base percentage 2 of the last 3 years. Altuve and Mason Wynn. Mason Wynn, I think, can go 15-30 this year. Altuve and Wynn, both leadoff hitters too, right? Yandy Diaz could hit leadoff too, depending upon what the Rays end up doing. But Mason Wynn, I really like that. Arenado and Goldschmidt, is that? No, that's not ideal either. But again, look at the price point on those 2 players. The price point on those 2 players is Goldschmidt at 15 and Arenado at 18. So I waited at the corner infield spot. And that was what I did. I went middle infield and waited on corner infield in this draft. Arenado and Goldschmidt should be fine. Are they good? Do I expect massive rebounds from where they were last year? No. I will say Goldschmidt in New York with a better lineup and a better ballpark is good. Arenado's a total wild card. It's why I drafted Josh Young a couple rounds later in the 21st round to give me depth at the third base spot in case I need it with Nolan Arenado. In the middle infield, Brendan Donovan, second base outfield eligible. That's nice. My outfield has got James Wood, Cody Bellinger, first base outfield eligible. Adolis Garcia, taking a chance on Nolan Jones rebound. Brandon Marsh basically is a 15-15 guy, and there's hope for more. And then obviously Shohei Ohtani. So that's the Tout Wars team that will attempt to defend the title. As I wrote in the article, how do I feel about the team? It's okay. It's okay. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, as I said, also the trade market and working the waiver wire. I mean, honestly, that's where these leagues are often won and lost, and the health of players. And there's no way we can know that. All right, so let's go on to LABR, and I'll change the screen there so people can follow along with the team. Again, 15-team mixed league, 5x5 scoring, traditional setup here. Same 14 hitters, 9 pitchers, same bench thing, the whole thing. The whole setup's the same, except the categories are slightly different. This is the traditional 5x5. Batting average, home runs, RBIs, runs, steals, ERA, whip, strikeouts, saves, and wins. In this draft, I had the 8th pick, so again, totally different spot in the draft, right in the middle of it. And this one was I made one quote-unquote mistake, which, as I noted in the piece, I mean, this is what happens. I'm hosting a show, the draft, and trying to do the draft. Like, it really shouldn't be doing that. It makes good radio, and you're involved, but really, I got Brendan Donovan on both teams. Now, Donovan's a 350 on-base percentage guy, so he's a really good on-base percentage play. And the flexibility is nice. Second base and outfield is really important in deeper leagues in particular. I got him as my outfield here as my 4th outfielder. That's fine. That's fine. As I noted in the piece, if I had been able to get away from talking and not just randomly, grabbing guys because I'm doing the show, I would have taken Nolan Jones there. I would have had Nolan Jones in both these leagues, but I didn't. Is it a mistake? I mean, Brandon Donovan's floor is higher than Nolan Jones. Obviously, his ceiling is not as high as Nolan Jones. And again, if I had my druthers, that would be Nolan Jones there instead of Brandon Donovan in the outfield. But when you look at this outfield, Kyle Tucker was my first-round pick. I took a chance on Ronald Acuna, which is not the normal Ray Flowers MO. But as we discussed on the broadcast, and as is mentioned in the article, last time he had knee surgery, he came back and played 82 games at Acuna, 24 home runs and 17 steals in 82 games. So let's say he plays 120 games this year. 25-25, 25-30, 30-25. Steve Phillips even said he could go 30-30 in that time frame. So is it a risk? Yeah. And as I wrote about, and again, go to FG, read the article, it's free. As I wrote about, that was kind of a pivoting point in this draft because I was going to take either Bryce Harper, who is the more stable, safer option. Harper was hit by a pitch. Sounds like it's not a big deal, just a bruise. He should be fine. It was going to be Harper or Acuna. Harper is more stable, no doubt. Harper would have allowed me to not run into the issue I did in this league where I had problems at the corner infield spot because I would have had that first baseman run off the hop. But I went Acuna. I dreamed big. We'll see how it plays out. Continuing the outfield, Riley Green, who I love, is my 3rd outfielder. We just talked about Brandon Donovan. Evan Carter is my 5th outfielder. Sign me up. Sign me up. Evan Carter has got the ability to have a 375 on base percentage. Now, this is not an OBP league, but have a 375 on base percentage. He could hit 20 home runs. He could steal 15 to 20 bases. He is, if his back holds up, it's easy to forget how high of a prospect. He was like the number 2 or 3 prospect, according to most people heading into last season. Remember, he was really good in 2023, and he was excellent in the playoffs. Excellent. Got hurt. We'll see how he goes. But as a 5th outfielder in a 15-team league, I love Evan Carter. To me, is fantastic. And then as my 6th outfielder, Garrett Mitchell, again, I feel fantastic about that too. I think Garrett Mitchell is a 15-15 guy. He's Brandon Marsh, but I think he can be better than that. I think he can be more than that. There's even a chance that he hits cleanup for the Brewers this year. He could go 20-20 this year. So I really like the outfield group here. In terms of the infield, Gabriel Moreno, who I mentioned earlier, Moreno's going to hit 280 this year with 15 home runs. That's kind of where I'm thinking. Freddie Fermin, just getting a guy that doesn't hurt me. Again, not ideal, but he should be fine. And, there's always a chance, too, that, 35-year-old Salvador Perez just breaks down. And if he breaks down, Fermin will see even more work. And I think his batting average he's a 250-plus batting average guy with the ability to hit 275. So the batting average shouldn't hurt me. if Ramin does indeed get extra plate appearances. Tristan Casas at first base, 9th round pick there. Feel really good about that. Tristan Casas is, looks like he's going to be that starter for the Red Sox. Great place to hit. He's another one of these guys that works at count, gets on base, has got massive power. He's in line for a breakout season. What's a breakout season for him? 270, 25, 90, something like that, with the ability to hit 30 home runs. Really like Tristan Casas. As I noted, I got Jose Altuve here again, a full round later. Had to make that decision because the first pick overall in the 15-team draft, this was smack dab in the middle of 8th. So got Altuve at second base. Third base is Max Muncy. Max Muncy has 30 home runs like every year. What is the number? Every year he's had 450 plate appearances. What is it? What is Muncy? Where are you at, Mr. Muncy? Muncy. Infield, outfield. Max Muncy. This is great radio, Ray, or TV too. Max Muncy has gone 30, 75, 75. 30 home runs, 75 runs, 75 RBIs. In 4 of his 5 seasons with 475 at-bats. At a 15th round cost, even if he's hitting 220, 30, 75, 75, I would love that. Shortstop, middle infield, here's Mason Wynn again. I didn't have to reach again on Mason Wynn in this draft as much as I did in LABR. In Tout Wars, so that's great. C.J. Abrams is my 3rd round pick here. C.J. Abrams, as I noted in the piece, and as we've talked about here on the show, he's basically a 20-40 guy. That's what he's done the last 2 years, basically. And while he's hit 245, I'm thinking he's hitting 270 this year. I really like that selection of C.J. Abrams. By the way, C.J. Abrams, my 3rd round pick, going to bat leadoff. Mason Wynn, my middle infielder, going to bat leadoff. My second baseman, Jose Altuve, going to bat leadoff. All 3 of my guys up the middle are likely to hit leadoff. That doesn't hurt at all. So Nolan Chanuel is my corner infield spot, as I mentioned, not taking Bryce Harper. Harper and Max Muncy with Tristan Casas looks a hell of a lot better than Casas, Muncy, and Nolan Chanuel. But, I wouldn't have got other players. I wouldn't have had Acuna in the outfield. That, wouldn't have had to find steals in another spot because Acuna is likely to steal 25 or 30 in my estimation. So, the team would have come together differently, but it would have been a lot nicer for me. Feel a lot more comfortable with Harper. Now, Chanuel, he's going to play every day for the Angels. They're not good. He stole double-digit bases last year. I'm not really expecting that, but let's say 8 to 10 steals. Showed a little bit more power than we anticipated last year. So maybe he's hitting 15 home runs, stealing 10 bases. He's got an excellent approach. I think it was kind of disappointing that his on-base percentage was like in the 340s last year. It was expected to be a little bit higher. I think a 275, 15, 70, 70, 10 kind of year can happen for Chanuel. Is that exciting? Hell no. Is he a breakout candidate? No. But this is a 15-team mixed league in the 21st round. That's roughly pick 360. There's a lot of you that are in leagues that don't even have 360 players drafted, right? So that's just is what it is. Again, this is a very different animal. It's a lot of fun, but it's a very different animal when you go that deep. So I think I'm keeping pace there at third base. I anticipate Chanuel being fine, much like I anticipated, Nolan Arenado being fine in the other league. So when you're in a league that's this deep, there's some spots on your team where you're just looking to be fine. And if the other guys come through, again, you make that one good trade, you make that one good pickup, your guys stay healthy. Being fine goes a long way. Trust me, it goes a long way, especially in these deeper leagues. On the bench, I got Brandon Marsh, who I mentioned earlier. Brandon Marsh is my backup outfielder. I love that. Again, I had 15-15 last year. I think he does it again this year. Jonathan Aranda was my 27th round pick. I wasn't 100% confident in Chanuel, right? So I went and grabbed Aranda. Aranda's going to see hopefully 450 plus at bats for the Rays. He's going to play an awful lot. He's got the ability to be a 25 home run bat. Playing at Steinbrenner Field is way better than playing at the Trop, something we've talked about here on the show. So I think Aranda, again, is somebody that most of you will never even consider drafting. In this scenario, when we're in the picks 400 range, Jonathan Aranda was the guy I took given the team need. So that's how the offense played out. Now let's talk a little bit of pitching before we talk some football with Tyler Buecher here in a few minutes. Okay. Did the same thing. This time I waited till the 5th round, one more round. And instead of in Tout Wars where I went 4th and 5th round pitching, right? It's 4th and 5th round. Let's pull it up real quick. 4th, 5th, and 8th round were my first 3 pitchers. Here it was 5th, 6th, and 7th round were my first 3 pitchers. So in this league, I got Luis Castillo, again, 7th round. I got Logan Webb in the 6th round. And I got Bryce Miller in the 5th round. Bryce Miller, by the way, struck out basically about an inning last year and was 4th in the league in whip. 4th, 5th in the league in whip. Like, no one talks about that. He's really good. Really good. He gets to pitch in Seattle, which is the best place in baseball to pitch. Luis Castillo, his teammate, gets to pitch in Seattle, the best place to pitch in baseball. Still has got the look of 180 innings, 180 strikeout kind of guy. Logan Webb led the National League in innings pitched last year. He's going to, win double-digit games. He's going to throw 190 innings. He's going to strike out 170 guys. So that's a really good group of top 3, a very stable top 3. Here's Robbie Ray yet again. So Robbie Ray's my 4th guy in both setups. As you can tell, I'm like Robbie Ray. My 5th starter is Nick Lodolo. Let's go. My 6th starter is Shane Baz. Let's go. Now, one pitching selection that I didn't make in this draft. And again, I'm hosting and drafting at the same time. If I had been just drafting and not hosting as well, I'm almost positive that my next pitcher would have been Gavin Williams. Didn't happen that way. Do I regret it? I mean, Miller, Webb, Castillo, Ray, Lodolo, Baz, I love that. I absolutely love that. Did I need another starting pitcher? No. Again, if I had been fully focused on drafting only and not also broadcasting, I'm almost positive I would have taken Gavin Williams. He went like right after my selection in that round. So, yeah. The big issue I have is the bullpen here, and you can obviously see it. Luke Weaver is an excellent depth play. He's the number 2 guy in the bullpen with the Yankees. Devin Williams coming off back injury. Luke Weaver dominated throughout the playoffs last year. He had a tremendous season. He's a tremendous addition in the 25th round. Jason Foley probably is the lead guy in the 9th inning for the Tigers. That may not be the case. They're really mix and match. Foley, Brisky, Holton. It's possible Jason Foley saves 5 games this year. I'd love it. I think I said on the broadcast 18 saves. Let's get 18 saves, Jason Foley. He's, again, a fine addition where I took him. There's risk there because it's not a certainty he's in the 9th inning guy. Edwin Yacida, 22nd round. He came through big down the stretch last year. Helped me out on my TOUT Wars team, actually. He is a number 2 guy with Tampa Bay. Pete Fairbanks can't stay healthy. It's not possible. He never has. So Yacida is probably going to get 8 to 10 saves just because. And if Fairbanks breaks down early, Yacida could get 30 saves this year. He's one of those kind of guys. So I like him as well. But this team, to a large extent on the pitching staff, comes down to the health and performance of Jordan Romano and Liam Hendricks. Is it ideal to have both of these guys on your team? 2 veterans coming off injury? No. Not ideal. 18th and 19th round in a 15-team league. Didn't overpay for either one. So the price point is fine. Given how my team came together, it was the path I had to take. Again, it's okay. It's not ideal. I wouldn't recommend this as a plan going in. But Romano and Hendricks, both these guys could save 20 games. So let's say Romano and Hendricks get 40 saves. Let's say Yacida gets 15 saves, right? So that's 55 saves. Let's say Foley gets 15 saves, and now I'm up to 70 saves. I'm not winning the saves category. I'm also not finishing dead last. I'm probably finishing in the middle, and that's okay. If my starting pitchers come through as I anticipate, I think being in the middle in the relief pitcher column, that saves column, I'll be perfectly fine with that. And I have a chance to win a league if I can do that. There's also obviously trades in the waiver wire if I can do something like that. And this is often how I build a team because the cost for closers often is just too much. So for more on both the TOUT Wars and the labor drafts, go to fantasyguru.com and click on the links there to both the articles. They're free to read. You can have fun with it, have a good time with it. Hopefully you do. Tell a friend, go check it out. You can make fun of me, I guess, if you want. Hit me up in Discord if you have any questions about it. But for more, go to fantasyguru.com for the free write-ups on the TOUT Wars and labor drafts. How did my teams fully come together? Did I leave stuff out here on the broadcast? Did I have other things to say? Check it out over at fantasyguru.com. Okay, so that's the baseball portion of the discussion today. But it is what day? It is a Thursday. And what do we do on Thursdays? We talk some football on Thursdays. And we talk to our man, Tyler Buecher, on Thursdays, who, despite having all kinds of uncertainty with his living situation, is still being a trooper and joining us here on the show. Welcome in, Tyler. How you doing, bud?
Doing good. Hopefully I've got the audio going. All right, cool. Doing good over here. The move is in 2 days. Finally get to relax after the weekend. I've been busy over here, so pardon me for not posting a ton of fantasy content as of now, but it's kind of a lull in terms of the NFL season right now. The baseball product, though, I've been seeing a lot of buzz for that. Excited for that going on. How's that going, Ray?
It's going well. Yeah, it's we have an article up every day. That's been the promise. So I've had an article up every day since January 6th, and I think we're going to keep that going all the way to the start of the season. So it's going well. We have the drafts that we just spent some time talking about. I'm running around. I've got like 6 shows on Sirius doing baseball drafts and all this extra stuff the next 7 days. So I'm crazy busy doing that. I'm filling in for Jeff because he's on vacation. So I'm looking forward to about the 15th of March, kind of like you're looking toward the 15th of March. I'm going to be okay. Yep. I get 2 weeks before the season starts, and then craziness continues. But things are going pretty well over there. Go to FG, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner to get signed up. If you got questions about any of the stuff that Tyler and I talk about here, any of the products, you want to combo something you're not seeing as a package deal, send a note to support@fantasyguru.com. Support@fantasyguru.com. All right, Tyler, let's talk a little bit about the combine. Not talking specifically about players, just pulling back from a big perspective here. I've always joked around and say, oh, guys running around in their underwear, yay. Like, it's a weird thing to me because, while we want to know how strong a guy is or how high he can jump or whatever, it's not playing football. It's like there's something to be said for playing the game versus just doing measurements. But I want to ask you about the players at the combine that aren't doing the drills. A lot of players are showing up and they're talking to teams and they're being interviewed and all that, but they're not actually participating in the combine. What do you feel like with those players that choose not to participate there?
I think the truth is, for a good number of these players that are entering the NFL Combine, they've been told and been highly praised for years. They were 4-star, 5-star recruits, built winning college programs, winning seasons. They've been hearing whispers of high draft pedigree. And there's a reason these guys have been invited to the NFL Combine. For them to voluntarily, that's the key word there, participate in something that could lower their draft stock by not having the best day in terms of them sprinting the 40, doing the 3-cone drill, weighing in a bit lighter than expected. It makes no sense if there's nothing for them to benefit from there. So I totally understand many of these elite prospects in terms of the guys that are anticipated to go round 1, round 2, to opt out, skip as many possible things that don't paint them in a positive light. It kind of stinks. Like, for 99% of the fantasy public, I don't think it matters, but for there's the 1% of us that care in terms of data collection. We want to have all the data. We want to have all the information, the athletic testing, the measurements. It's tough whenever we can't do the apples to apples comparisons of 2 prospects. I mean, they're never going to have the same on-field apples to apples competition because they're never playing the same schedule. They're not playing behind the same lines, but the off-field data, the measurements and stuff like that, those are data points that provide more signal than noise that I personally like to collect because I think that's super helpful. It's easy to come on here and complain about something, but I think offering a solution is the best path. I heard somebody talk about this recently, and I don't even know what the context of it was, but it's something that I've been trying to apply to my day-to-day life. Okay. And for the NFL, I think they would be wise to incentivize participation here for players that are healthy enough to perform. There are definitely some players that are coming off injury where it makes sense for them not to perform when they're not at 100%, but players that are able to and are opting out, maybe it could be a monetary thing. Like $500K to a college kid is an insane amount of money.
Right.
And when you compare that to what they could get as let's say a top 10 pick, sure, maybe that's not enough to elicit a response from everybody, but it could be for some. It could be for most. Especially when we start looking at day 3 selections where that $500K would go a very long way relative to their NFL contract. That would be, I don't know, maybe it's a large sum, but right. It's a solution. I'm throwing something out there.
Well, let me ask you just to follow up. Should this even be a thing? I mean, we've had film on all these guys. You want to sit down and talk to them and all that. I totally get that part, but the other sports don't have days like this. Like, baseball players don't have pro days, and they don't, no other sport, unless I'm just drawing a total blank, does this. There's international competitions and there's all kind of stuff. Like, the NFL basically created a product to have a product when it's not even really necessary.
I'd never thought of it that way, but yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. I think the point of it is a lot of for the interviews, but also for the testing in terms of the athleticism. We just
to your point, what normally happens is, oh, he's an inch shorter. Oh, he's 12 pounds lighter. Oh, his 40 time is a tenth slower. Like you said, there's no benefit to the players even doing this because unless you're, from Appalachian State and you're, player 377 that no one's going to draft, like, what's the advantage to any of these guys doing it? Because it's almost like it's just going to be a negative that's going to be that outcome, and that's not what Tyler Buecher wants to do. He wants to be positive.
Yeah, I just feel like we're on a path toward fewer and fewer players participating. It's just the unfortunate reality of these events costing players money where, you could be on the right path too, where it could be a short-lived future for this event where people are already talking about how sick they are of it always being in Indianapolis. Maybe instead of changing the location, they change the entire event and make it purely interviews.
Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. Another interesting thing is, and speaking of the players that will actually participate, something I think about, and I'm sure you've thought of it too, it's this player X, 40-yard time is really important. Like, is this guy going to be a 4.5 guy? We're going to have to get nervous. Is it going to be a 4.39? And we're going to get super excited. So the player just trains for months running a 40. Doesn't have anything to do with football. Doesn't have anything. Just training 40-yard dash, 40-yard dash, 40-yard dash. You can improve. I mean, we all know that, right? If you put your mind to it, you can improve in a tenth matters, right? So maybe are some of the numbers we're getting, some of the measurements we're getting real anyway? I mean, if you think of it from that perspective, if someone spent 4 months running a 40, great. But again, is that really playing football?
Yeah, is it their playing weight, or do they shed 12 pounds so that they can run the 40 a tenth of a second faster?
Right.
Totally agree with you. I think it's kind of bananas, which is why I don't really put a ton of stock in this. I think there are like two camps where some people put a ton of stock in it, others don't. And the truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in the middle. What I'm really looking for here, though, is more of players hitting certain thresholds when it comes to size and weight. These are important measurements to me in terms of what I'm looking for because they indicate speed score, particularly for like running backs and wide receivers. Speed score is a very predictive output for future success in the NFL and future ability to put up fantasy points. The truth is the NFL is a violent sport, and having these players that are abnormally light, they have a tough time lasting season over season. They have a tough time being out there for a full duration of snaps throughout a game. I look at players that have been super light in weight over the past few years at the wide receiver position. A guy like Troy Franklin had some day 2 buzz last year, slipped to round 4 because of, I think, his weight, 176 pounds, wasn't very heavy. The year before, we saw Jalen Hyatt win the Biletnikoff Award, checked in at 176. We've seen very little production from him these last 2 years over with the Giants. On the flip side, I do think there are players that can gain value. You did the Appalachian State example.
I don't know if that's a good one. I just tossed
it. I think it's perfect. I think it's perfect.
Okay.
From your neck of the woods, Isaac Guerrero. He's a guy who had minimal production his final years at Wisconsin and Louisville, and tore up the NFL Combine with his speed score, a 4.33 second at 221 pounds, best speed score of the last 3 years. Top 5. It was number 3 best RB performance dating back to the year 2000.
Wow.
That's a guy who didn't get a lot of production on the field,
right.
But because of it, he was still able to get a round 4 draft pick from a team that highly coveted that athleticism. So for those guys, yeah, there's a lot to benefit here, but otherwise the value for like some of the top end guys is just not there anymore. I think we're going to see fewer and fewer elite studs like the Ashton Giantes of the world. Like those caliber of athletes are likely to be fewer and fewer participants moving forward. As again, there's just no incentive. It's only downside.
Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. Wrapping up the combine, is there a player? Are there a couple of players? Anyone you want to see in particular? How they measure, how they grade out, or is it we're not even looking specifically at player A or B because most of these guys, as you said, are way down on lists of draft prospects.
Yeah, again, I still want to see the combination of size and speed. So I do think there's some merit to this and some things you can get out of it. Like last year, we saw the 2 Texas wide receivers, Xavier Worthy, 4.21, broke the record. A.D. Mitchell, also a 4.34 at 205 pounds. To me, that was more impressive at his weight to run that speed rather than Worthy 4.21 running that at 165 where a gust of wind knocks him off his path.
Or a single. We all saw that in the spring practice, right? We got the straight arm and went flying 9 feet. Yeah.
Yep. Texas has another pair of very fast wideouts entering the NFL Combine this year, in Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond. I'm expecting Golden to be kind of the A.D. Mitchell version of this, and Bond, with Golden being like kind of maybe a little under 200, but close to that 4.35, 4.40. And then Bond, he's probably the 180-pound sub guy he's going to put up the blazing speed, but it's going to be like at like 177 pounds. We're like, that's not exciting. I don't know. But those are the two guys that came to mind. Caleb Johnson from Iowa, he's a running back. He also is somebody that I've been really, really interested in from the film perspective. He's an early favorite of mine in this process, but he's also got great metrics. Number 2 in yards after contact per attempt. Number 3 in most gains of 15 plus yards. And that's what I want to see, is if he can translate that yards after contact from the collegiate level to the NFL level by looking at his speed score. Because I think he could be a guy right now when you look at like rookie drafts in terms of rookie fantasy mock drafts. Caleb's kind of in like the number 10 overall pick kind of area. But if he has a really good combine, goes to a really good team that needs a running back, he could honestly leapfrog some of these wideouts and be a top 5 pick.
Tyler Buecher of FG. Tyler, let's talk a little bit about the NFL directly now. I read your articles, and there's graphs and tables and charts, and I talk to you, and I know you're a smart guy, and I know your background and everything like that. So help me and the listeners understand the following. Why should any of us care about the salary cap? Because to me, this is the fakest thing in sports. I mean, they're 150 under, they're 150 over. They signed this guy, they moved this money down, they signing bonus. Like, there's all this talk about the salary cap. You know, the Saints seemingly every year are $50 million over the salary cap. Is it a fake number? Does it matter at all?
I don't know. I hate for us both to play bad cop here. But yeah, I think it's definitely fake and something that's very exploitable. Like, eventually the bill comes due. Yes, the Saints are having to face a lot of dead money this year, but there are certainly ways for them to get around it. They can push other contracts down the road in order to get under the cap limit for this season. It just hurts them in the next season. But next year they are 60 million under the cap. So like, that's great. Right now they're 60 million over the cap. Not great. The next season, 2027, I thought I saw a video just right before hopping on here where they're 220 million under the cap. So this could be a rather quick turnaround within like 2 years of the Saints going from cap hell, quote unquote, the key buzzword everyone likes to say with them, right, to something much more manageable, where if they get rid of these bloated contracts, they stop doing the restructuring. They're going to have to do it this year or cut a bunch of veterans and replace them with some UFL level players on the veteran minimum deals. So it could be a rough 2025 year. I just saw news today that they want to bring back Derek Carr. Good Lord. I cannot understand that move for salary cap reasons or for NFL winning reasons, or for helping yourself in the future in terms of getting yourself a high draft pick.
Right.
Yikes. So it looks like the cap hell may not be a 1 year solution. Could be a multi-year. Where was I going with this? It's basically a situation where it's funny money, where they can move it around and it's malleable. They can do whatever they need to get themselves under a certain cap number in a certain calendar year. And whenever there is an issue, they just push it to the next season. So it's not a fun topic for me, because I think it's BS.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that, there's a movement in baseball. The fans want salary floor. They want a salary cap. They're looking for that, right? Because of the Dodgers spending so much. A's not spending anything, as an example. But I've always said, and it sounds like you're in agreement with me, if you're going to have a cap, you've got a cap. Right? If it's 150 million, 200 million, 250 million, 300, whatever it is, that's it. And there's none of this signing bonus and trading this. That's it, right? And the NBA does it too. You can sign your own players to keep them around, which I understand. You want to keep the guy on his own team, but you can give the guy a bigger contract. If there's a cap, doesn't there have to just be a cap? And we have to get rid of all the other nonsense, because otherwise there's no cap if you can shenanigans everything and make it unrealistic to even have a number there.
Well, again, like the bill does come due, where I hate to use that cliche again, but if it doesn't apply to this year, they'll just make it apply to the next year, where the money is still assigned to these players. It's just, when does it hit the cap in terms of it impacting a season? That's really it's unfortunate in terms of the manipulative ability that these guys have with it. But
the NFL could make it simple too if they just guaranteed the contracts.
Yeah.
Then you know exactly what it is, right? Then there's none of this, we're moving things down the road. It's just you're getting paid $6 million a year because you have a 3-year contract that says $18 million. It's not really a 1-year contract for $6 million. Anyway, we're trying to stay positive here. I don't want to make you go down the rabbit hole. Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. Here's a positive, I think. The NFL still can't put a chip in the football. Still don't know why that can't happen. But we did get a report that starting this year, in 2025, the NFL is no longer going to use the chains to measure first downs. They're actually going to have the Hawkeye virtual measurement system. Small step. Again, I still don't know why we can't get a chip in the football because when there's 18 guys on top of each other at the line of scrimmage, okay. But this is a positive, right? Now, do you have any concerns about the technology not working properly, or do you think this is the right step the NFL would take?
I think it's the right step. I mean, it's $1 billion process. Like, why is this still being used by 2 fat guys on the sideline with the chains? Right. Respect to those fellas. Sorry. I'm sure you're not all overweight. Yeah, I'm glad that they're still keeping that. That's just the quote unquote secondary method.
Right.
But yeah, I'm glad they're finally moving into the 21st century.
Right.
Do it correctly. I don't care how you do it. Just do it correctly. This business is I don't know how much it is. It's in the billions where we can have multiple cameras all over the stadium to find any kind of issues or questions that we may have with a ball landing spot or where it is. Add the chip in there. Do everything you can to make it accurate. I just don't understand why we are going through these hurdles for no reason.
Yeah, and it's like, there's always every game, potentially multiple times in games, there's the pile up. It's 3rd and 1, there's the pile up. And one ref runs in and he runs this way, and the other ref runs in and runs this way. They don't even meet in the middle. You watch the replay 9 times. We have no idea where the football is. There's no way you can't. It's impossible to tell. So what's going to happen when this Hawkeye measuring system? How's that? I don't even know how you can implement it. If it's like the guy's running in the open field and he gets tackled, well, okay, was the ball knee? Okay, but 3rd and 1 if it's a tush-push scenario, is this going to work? I don't know. But it is moving forward, which is good, like you said. I think I remember somewhere the NFL generates like $7 or $8 billion a year, something ridiculous. Yeah, come on, don't have chains. I agree with you there. Let's talk about a player. This one's fascinating, a player situation. There is a lot of, before we get there, Trent Williams. How important is Trent Williams to the Niners? I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. Sounds like he's going to return, which is big news. It was really uncertain whether he'd be back. There's the questions about Deebo Samuel, and he's going to get traded. The question about the Christian McCaffrey and his health. But Trent Williams still performs at a very high level. He's an extremely important piece of this offense. Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, very important part. The offensive line for the Niners system is super important. Williams, still at his age, still a tremendous asset in the run blocking game. I was a bit surprised to hear that, actually. They need to inject a bunch of youth in this line, though. This team has a lot of holes there, and they just need an influx of youth and talent. So spending round 1 capital would be wise, even with Trent returning. They still need to just do it and get ready for the next wave of offensive linemen. And it's not like this unit is a world beater right now at this time. He had a tough year with off-field stuff. So yeah. I'm glad to hear him returning.
Yep. Matthew Stafford, what are your thoughts? I mean, he's going to the Giants. He's going to the Raiders. He's staying with the Rams. I don't know what his wife thinks. There's all kinds of stuff going on with Matthew Stafford, and it seems like whatever happens with him has a little bit of a trickle-down effect at the quarterback position. There's still a few, situations are uncertain. We'll talk about one of them in a sec. Your Matthew Stafford thoughts, Todd? Yeah,
we talked about this last week, where we thought there's a chance that it's an untenable situation based on reports where it just comes down to money, where the Rams were not willing to pay him. I'm not sure if that's true at this point. I haven't heard any updates in the last week, aside from just rumors of him going pretty much everywhere.
Right.
I still like the Giants as a fit because I think they're a quarterback away. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea of we keep hearing the Rodgers and Devante Adams pairing as a grouped item going together to another team. I like the idea of Stafford and Kupp, another player they've hinted at moving on from this offseason. Both players towards the twilight of their career, but on a win now going to a win now situation, they could be very valuable.
Cup and Neighbors. That's interesting too, right? Catching
Yes.
passes from Stafford. That's very interesting. You mentioned that this. I'm starting to get the sense that Aaron Rodgers is going to play in 2025, and he's going to play for $9. Like it really seems like it's not begging, but he's pushing hard to have someone say, we're going to turn our organization over to you. I don't know if anyone wants to do it at this point. I don't know if it's worth it at this point. We've talked about him, is he still a startable piece? Sure. Are you winning the Super Bowl with him? You mentioned the Devante Adams thing. In theory, we're getting a Hall of Fame receiver and a Hall of Fame quarterback if we bring these guys in. That, in theory, sounds great. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the team going to bite on this? Because apparently Adams is like, I'll bring Devante Adams with me. Let's go. What do you think?
I'm done with Rodgers, and I'm sure many of you are as well. This is something we talked about last week, where it felt like Rodgers was trying to avoid hits rather than make completions in the pocket there. It just felt like he was ready to not be under duress and face world-class athletes rushing him and trying to hurt him week in and week out. That said, I think he just wants the spotlight to continue. And for that to continue, it would mean him picking up a new team. Raiders have been a hinted option. I don't know. Do you see any teams that make sense that would want to see? It's not just getting a quarterback. You're getting the Aaron Rodgers show, the Aaron Rodgers saga.
Right.
And the funniest thing is like him making the quotes about with the Jets, where we'll put all the off-field stuff aside. You are the off-field stuff.
Right.
What
they
team
asked you to stop
is
doing the off-field stuff, and they let you stay their quarterback, and you said no. So yeah.
Bingo. What team do you think could be a Rodgers fit? Because I don't have many good solutions. Just wild card picks.
I don't either. But then you've heard the Rams rumor has been out there. If Stafford leaves, the and again, if Stafford leaves, the Rams would need a quarterback. They said they'd be interested in Jimmy Garoppolo, and Garoppolo's fine, but I find that, I don't know, to answer your question, I don't know. I wouldn't want him. I mean, I'm done too. I wouldn't want it. But the package deal thing with Adams is so interesting because it's bad enough if you're bringing Rodgers in the whole Rodgers show, right? If you're let's say the Rams, and you see this, and you're Puka Nacua, and you see this company coming, isn't your first reaction, oh shit? Like it's like, because he's throwing the ball 140 times to Devante Adams. You know what I mean? It's like, is that so? It's not just even himself, Rodgers, and what he could or couldn't do. And again, in theory, you're bringing a wide receiver that could go to the Hall of Fame. Like, I get it, but does that turn your team structure? Does that ruin the locker room? Does that create such a divide that it's worth anything, Tyler?
Yeah, and then you look at the money aspect too, where Rodgers, you said maybe coming on a cheap deal, but Adams certainly won't.
Yeah,
he's still a player that I think has at least 3 to 5 good years left. He's getting up there, but he's still producing.
Right.
So there's the money aspect as well. I just see it as like what teams are capable of a culture swap like that, and it's teams that don't have an identifiable culture. Right. The Titans to me seem like a wild card pick. I mentioned them last week, which would be fun given all the other draft picks they have. But I don't know. I think it's a complete wild card situation, and it's going to be a tough one to watch because it's going to change so many things from like a projections viewpoint and the trickle down effect from wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, tight ends, running backs. Rodgers is a chain mover, a offensive philosophy mover, consistently playing slow and having low volume offenses. It's just a huge culture change to bring in a player like that. So I think the list is going to be very small. Tyler
Buecher of FantasyGuru.com. My final quarterback question to ask you about a quarterback situation, I guess, to discuss with you, Tyler. The Colts have Anthony Richardson, and they thought he was going to be their guy. The prototypical running, throwing, big quarterback, the next Cam Newton, all that. Obviously, it's gone horribly wrong to this point. He's been unable to stay on the field because of injuries. When he's been on the field, he's been scattershot at best. We're now getting the Colts GM saying, look, he's our quarterback, but we're going to have an open quarterback competition. Okay. Now, they don't have that quarterback yet, right? We don't know who that's going to be. But talk us through the situation with the Colts, because this is what can happen to you if you take the wrong guy. And we're going to see this. Is Cam Ward the right guy? Or Sanders? Are they just being taken in the first round because there's no one else? When you build your organization around a guy, and obviously the Colts are trying to do that with Richardson, if it doesn't work, leaves you in a tough spot.
That's very true. We haven't really seen the evolution of Richardson evolve whatsoever from a passer perspective. Coming out of Florida, he was averaging very few pass attempts per game. and they were mostly just all vertical long shots. That's carried over to the NFL, and we've seen some great success there with guys down the field. It's just been very sporadic whenever those are catchable targets and anywhere being close to registered as on-target throws. I understand adding a new QB to the mix. We haven't seen enough from him in the past few years to warrant blind faithfulness to Anthony Richardson. Yep. That totally makes sense to me. And I think the path that I would probably be going down, though, is the veteran path. Maybe making a bid for Stafford. I don't know why we haven't talked Stafford to Colts. That could make sense. An indoor situation, gets to play behind it's a decent line, but there are some quality pass catching weapons that have a lot of yards after catch ability. I think that would be an interesting spot there. Throwing in the towel on Richardson, though, kind of don't blame him. Like, we haven't seen any step forward. The progress has been minimal. He hasn't shown anything to merit it. Maybe we get a Trey Lance here and we get some dual threat competition here. I don't know. I think the Colts are wise to bring in competition. I'm just curious to see what they end up doing.
You mentioned Richardson and what he was coming out of college. Is this another example, too, if we're being honest, about a guy starting at the NFL level when he shouldn't have been? Like, because again, we talk about this all the time, salary cap. You want to, if you can, get that quarterback on that rookie deal and then build all these players around him and try to win the Super Bowl there. So there is a need for teams to sometimes fast forward the quarterback, right? Let's find out what we got if this guy's the answer there, because then we can spend money in other spots. There's also the pressure from the media and the fan base. You spend a first round pick, let's go. Are we doing these guys a disservice? And is Richardson just the next in the long line of quarterbacks that really weren't ready physically? Yeah, but really weren't ready to lead the NFL team. So as much as this is on Richardson, is this kind of on the Colts too?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at every Jaden Daniels we've got a Caleb Williams, where there's a step back for one guy, a step forward for the other. Every situation should be viewed independently. And the problem is these teams that are often drafting with a top 10, top 15 pick are quarterback needy squads. Mm-hmm. The teams that have the back half of the draft selections, guys that are able to take a Jordan Love, are able to sit and wait for those guys to find the right time. That's the anomaly. The majority of teams these years are rushing to play these top 10, top 15 picks. Mm-hmm. And it's because there's just a lack of quality quarterback talent in the NFL right now. So the best way to get better, taking those live bullets sometimes. And a guy like Richardson, who is a big guy who can take some hits, has just taken some bad injuries, though, unfortunately, to start his year. Usually those guys, though, are more durable in terms of the mobile QB archetype. I don't know. I don't think that waiting is an option for many of these teams. And because of that, we're forced to see subpar QB play. And maybe the best path is we get a Jimmy Garoppolo stolen from one squad as a backup to a starter, and we do the bridge QB thing. But I don't think the leash is long enough for GMs to comfortably play that game, where they're fine with that, or coaching staffs, GMs or coaching staffs. We could lump them together. And that's really a dice roll when you're playing with people's futures and their careers.
It's a great point that we don't often touch on enough. You're right. I mean, GMs and head coaches have 3 years if they're lucky, right? If they struggle for 2 years, they may not even get a third year. And so you got to be sure what the decision at the quarterback spot oftentimes is going to determine whether you have a job in year 3 or not, right? So
correct.
It's a really good point there. Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. You can find him all over FG. Right now, you heard him mention at the start. You can see a box behind him there. He is moving, so he's not in Discord answering questions every 10 minutes and all that like normal. But I'm assuming that will return to normal next week. Tyler, that's kind of your thought?
Yeah, ready to hit the ground running starting March. So March 3rd, 4th, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. We'll be back there ramping up the content. I've got a whole sheet of like articles and things and projects that I like to get started. So ready for the NFL offseason franchise mode to kick off in full effect.
Again, he's Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. Thanks for joining us today, Tyler. Have a good, safe, quick, efficient travel. Hope nothing gets broken. Hope it goes smoothly, all that kind of stuff. We'll look forward to talking with you next week if you have the opportunity to do so with us.
All right. Thanks for having me, and good luck, everyone, this week.
He's Tyler Buecher. I'm Ray Flowers. Tomorrow on the show, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we'll be back with Russell Clay. We'll talk football with him about a half hour into the show. We'll talk baseball the first half hour starting at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Head over to FG, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. Let's go. Let us help you win in 2025. For Tyler, I'm Ray. We'll see you tomorrow here on Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com.